Hey there, I'm the Madcaster. Am I glad to see you here? Today we're doing something a little different. I'm actually doing my first collab with another creator, and she's a great person. Her name is BeTheeCommentator. You may have seen her stuff, but if you haven't, please go check her out. I'm going to put her link to her channel down below. And what we're doing is we're talking about Travis Scott and Astroworld and that horrible, horrible day. And she's going to be talking about sort of his background and some other things in his life. And I'm going to be focusing on the conduct that he's had happen in his past that has led to these lawsuits that have been filed against everybody involved with the concert in the aftermath and why they're naming him personally. And I'm going to explain that to you. So let's get into it.
Travis Scott was born Jacques Webster II on April 30th, 1991 in Houston, Texas, to Wanda and Jacques Webster I. He lived with his grandmother and older brother who is autistic. They lived in South Park, which is a post-World War II neighborhood in the south central area of Houston, Texas. The boys shared a small bedroom and had a very active childhood, but because the neighborhood was riddled with violence, they were oftentimes afraid to go outside because of the criminal activity. The boys would see, quote, random crazy things. They would see mad bums and crazy, spazzed out people looking weird, hungry, and grimy, end quote. South Park's crime rate escalated and the Websters determined it was not a place for Travis to go up in. So at the age of 6, his parents picked him up from his grandmother's house and brought him to live with them in Missouri City, a town a few miles outside of Houston, Texas. This move was a drastic change for Travis. He went from living in a town where streets were filled with action and crime to a suburban area with nice homes and considered one of the best places to live in Houston. Travis now lived with his parents in a middle-class community, and it didn't take long for him to adapt. His father ran his own business and his mother worked for Apple, and the couple would have 2 more children. As a boy, music was his outlet and passion, and the older he got, the more that passion grew. He learned how to play a few different instruments such as the drums and piano, which he would later incorporate into his beats. Travis's parents encouraged him to focus on his studies as they felt school would help him secure a stable future. At the time, Travis went to a private elementary school, and it was there where he would see kids whose families were well off. It made Travis realize there was more to life than just living in Houston. He wanted the finer things in life, so he started making other plans. Travis would often skip school to work on his music. At the time, he was rapping over instrumentals, but when he saw Kanye, who produced his own music, Travis grew a desire to do the same. So at the age of 16, he started experimenting with different beats, sounds, and rhythm in hopes of developing his own style. Travis wanted his beats to sound, quote, darker, end quote. By 17, Travis was taking his music seriously. The more he pursued his passion in this area, the more combative his relationship got with his father. His father was an educated man who had his master's in political science and wanted the best for his son. The best for his son was higher education in his opinion, yet Travis displayed no desire to further his education. Oftentimes, his father would burst into his room while he was in the middle of making a beat and rip the power out. He would, quote, shut the power off in my room, end quote. This led to several physical fights between the two. His father felt Travis needed structure and something that in his mind was more stable. Travis's father and grandfather were both musicians growing up, but expressed how the music industry had changed so much that they didn't want Travis to go down that path. After graduating high school early, Travis was accepted to the University of Texas. To make his family proud, he attended university, but every day he showed up to class, his mind would drift and daydream about music. He would think about the direction he wanted to go stylistically and how he could make that happen. Travis said, quote, if I'm going to class, I'm going to have to sit here and look at this professor that's teaching me things I'm not trying to hear. I want to be a rapper. I'm trying to ice out my chain. I want to rock crowds and have kids spaz. That's what I wanted to do. Entertain. F this whole having a job and a desk and a boss. Kiss my A. End quote. After 2 years of college, Travis dropped out. He couldn't tell his parents that though, so he lied to his mother and told her he needed money to buy a new computer for school. After receiving the money, he booked himself a plane ticket and took off to New York. While living in Houston, Travis made connections with Mike Wax from Ill Roots, who was based in New York. When Travis skipped town and landed in New York, he would meet up with Mike, an entrepreneur who promoted artists and developed graphic design for mixtapes. Travis slept on his friend's floor while recording music in the studio until he had run out of places to stay. He realized he couldn't stay in New York any longer as he had worn out his welcome. So after 4 months of his music not really taking off and having nowhere else to crash, Travis left and went to LA. After arriving in LA, Travis connected with another friend, and the two continued pursuing their music careers when his friend left all of a sudden. Travis had no money or a place to stay, but at that point, his parents found out he dropped out of college and cut him off financially. He would go back home to Houston, where his parents prohibited him from living with them. Leaving Travis with no options, he would go back to LA, where he made plans to stay with a friend at USC. As soon as he landed in LA, he realized he had 14 messages from rapper T.I. T.I. conveyed to Travis that he liked his style and encouraged him to keep pursuing music.
I found him I found him online. I actually found him and Iggy at the same time. I was just getting out of prison. I was rebuilding. Uh, and I kind of like, you know what I'm saying? It was just I casted a wide net. Yeah. And I need the best that right now has to offer.
After his meeting with T.I., Travis would release the following music video. News began to spread quickly about Travis. People were talking about him now. They would talk about his beats and sound, and Travis would eventually start making money selling his beats. While living in a hotel, Travis got a call from his manager asking if he could go to New York to meet with rapper Kanye. For Travis, this was a dream come true. Ever since he began building his craft, Kanye was always an inspiration for him. He began producing beats because of Kanye. After this call, Travis was on the next plane in New York where he would meet his idol. The two would connect, and Travis would meet other guys in the industry that would help him further his career, where he would also learn techniques and tips to help expand his brand in terms of production. Travis was making a name for himself, and before you knew it, his career took off with the release of his first full-length project, a mixtape titled Al Pharaoh in 2012. The following year, Travis released his debut single titled Upper Echelon, featuring rappers T.I. and 2 Chainz. This song was shot to radio stations and helped the public see Travis in a commercially appealing way. He was making his way to the mainstream sector. Travis's music wasn't the only thing that caught people's attention. His stage presence did. At the age of 6, Travis had dreams of becoming a wrestler. He looked up to the high-flying tag team duo the Hardy Boys and X-Pac from the group D-Generation X. He admired wrestling so much that when his music career took off, he decided he wanted his concerts to feel like a wrestling match. High-flying moves, energy, sweat, jumping around, something he calls raging. According to Travis, all he needed was, quote, air and a mic. Not a stage really to perform. You just need something to stand on. It could even be somebody, end quote. At a Travis Scott event, he didn't like the crowd or his fans just standing. You had to jump, scream, shout, feel it. If you're not throwing up, something's not right. Travis's concerts were described as chaotic and typically involved crowd surfing, mosh pits, and stage diving. He quickly developed a reputation for having very highly energized performances where he roused up the crowd. Travis developed a lot of influence over his audience and had the ability to persuade them into doing things.
So welcome to my portion of this collab, and I'm going to now talk about the legal aspect of what happened at Astroworld and the lawsuits that ensued afterwards. So following the horrible, tragic events that happened, there were a number of lawsuits that were filed against the promoters and the organizers of the concert, and also against Travis Scott and Drake as well personally. And we're going to examine, why was Travis Scott named personally when he was up on stage? He clearly didn't have anything to do with the logistics of the concert and the setting up of the arena and all of that. So why is he responsible? Well, in order to understand that, we have to take a look at things that have happened at his past concerts to understand why they've decided to name him personally in these lawsuits. So we're going to talk about that now. And first, I'm going to introduce you to what are the elements of negligence that they have to prove in order to win a lawsuit against Travis Scott personally. So I'm going to put this up here and take a look with me. So you can see here the elements of negligence that they're going to have to prove in order to have the court or the jury, whoever is handling the trial, I believe it's a jury trial, in order for the jury to decide that Travis Scott was responsible, the plaintiffs have to prove that he was negligent. And in order to do that, these are the things that have to happen. These are the elements, we call them, of negligence. First, they have to show that Travis Scott owed his fans a specific legal duty. And that was basically to ensure their safety while they were attending his concert. 2, they have to show that Travis Scott failed to carry out that duty, that he failed to ensure the safety of his fans. They have to show that Travis Scott's failure to keep his fans safe caused some type of event to occur, and that the concert attendees suffered harm as a result of that event. We'll talk a little bit more about this later when I get to the actual lawsuits that were filed for Astroworld. But first, I'm going to talk to you about why there are things in his background that have caused these people to accuse him of being negligent, as well as the organizers and promoters. Of course, it's easy to understand why they would be suing the promoters like Live Nation and the concert venue. And actually, the concert venue has been dismissed out of the case because they didn't actually, even though they own the venue, they didn't actually set it up and arrange the logistics of that night. That was all done by other people and other companies. But you would understand why the people who set up the arena and who handle the logistics of the arena, security, etc., you'd understand why people would be blaming them for the terrible things that happened, because they didn't control the crowd, they didn't have it properly set up so that people had enough room to walk around, etc. That's clear. But why sue Travis Scott? He didn't organize the event. He performed there, but he didn't promote the event. He didn't set up the concert venue. But what they looked at was, is there a pattern here of conduct that can be found in how things have happened at Travis Scott's past concerts that might lead people to believe that he is negligent because he has a pattern of getting his fans rowdy, etc. And we're going to look at that right now. So Travis Scott has a history of inciting violence and mayhem at his concerts. And the 30-year-old rapper has been arrested twice, at least twice, and he's also been sued multiple times based on things that have happened at his concerts in the past. So we're going to talk about now the several different concerts where something legal happened that has sort of demonstrated a pattern. You'll see that clearly in a couple of minutes. So first event where something happened, and thankfully nothing terribly serious, but at Lollapalooza in 2015, Travis Scott was arrested and charged with disorderly conduct. Travis Scott had encouraged his fans to ignore security and to climb the barricade, so they of course did what he asked. And there's video of the incident showing Scott telling fans to jump the barricades to move closer to the stage, while he also told security to move out of the way. Fans then jumped the barricades into the security pit, but thankfully the situation was quickly brought under control by the security on that night, and he was accused of inciting a stampede, and he pleaded guilty to reckless conduct charges. I believe they had downgraded the charges from what they were. Then also in 2015 at something called the Open Air Festival in Switzerland, Travis Scott was giving a concert, and during the concert he decided it would be fun to go crowd surfing, and so he jumped into the crowd and they began passing him along. And during that, one fan pulled it off his shoe, and it's enraged Travis Scott so much that he stopped the concert and he encouraged his fans to F this guy up, and also he spit on the guy. So I don't think, from what I can find, that he was actually ever arrested or that any lawsuits or anything came out of that. But a video of the incident after the Astroworld tragedy began circulating around in the press showing the incident, and it just really documents a pattern of Travis Scott being reckless at his concerts. By the way, you can see Clarice is here, Amelie is here, and Olivier is sitting in my lap, so I'm surrounded by cats. But anyways, in 2017, Travis Scott was again arrested at one of his concerts for behavior that was similar to what he did at the Lollapalooza concert in Chicago in 2015. And this particular concert was at the Walmart Amphitheater in Rogers, Arkansas. During the concert, he encouraged the fans to rush the stage and bypass security. And in the stampede that followed, several people were injured, including a security guard from the security company that was hired for the night, and also a local police officer. Luckily, the injuries weren't serious, but as soon as the concert was done, I don't know why they waited till the end of the concert. You know, it blows my mind. But anyways, they waited to the end of the concert, and then they arrested him. He was charged with 3 misdemeanors: disorderly conduct, inciting a riot, and endangering the welfare of a minor, because one child was injured in the stampede, but she recovered fully. The last two charges were actually dropped as part of a plea deal. And as an attorney, I mean, sometimes these things are just so distasteful. But anyway, so those two charges were dropped, and he pleaded guilty to the disorderly conduct charge and also paid $6,000 in fees to the two people who were injured at the concert. $6,000 doesn't sound like a lot. And I don't have any evidence that they actually sued him afterwards, so I don't know. But I mean, I know I would have sued him. But do you see a pattern developing here in his conduct? So now we've got several incidents where something reckless and dangerous has happened. Also in 2017, at a venue called Terminal 5 in New York City, Travis Scott again was reckless and engaged in reprehensible behavior. And he encouraged, and actually there's video footage of this, he encouraged fans who were up, this venue had like several levels of balconies. He encouraged fans in the balconies to jump into the crowd. How reckless is that? And there is video of this event. And unfortunately, some people did jump and the crowd caught them. But unfortunately, one poor guy, and his name is Kyle Green, he was pushed towards the balcony when the crowd was rushing forward to try to do what Travis Scott was encouraging them to do. And he unfortunately fell over the balcony and landed. They didn't catch him. He landed on the floor. And to make matters worse, even though he was terribly injured, Travis Scott ordered security to drag the man up on stage so that Travis Scott could give him his ring, I guess as sort of a conciliation. But in dragging him up on stage, they most likely worsened his injuries, and the poor guy ended up being permanently paralyzed from the waist down. He did later sue Travis Scott. I don't know if there was a settlement. I was unable to find the exact lawsuit, so I don't know what court it was in, and I haven't heard anything about a settlement, but my guess is there probably is going to be or was a settlement. I feel bad for him, and I hope he does win, or he did get a big settlement, because it's terrible. It wasn't even his fault because he wasn't taking part. He was just an innocent bystander who got caught up in this mad rush. Also, in that case, after Kyle Green filed suit against Travis Scott filed suit against the concert venue, claiming that it was their fault that people got reckless, which I think is really lame, considering it's clear from the video that he's encouraging them to do this. So how you can blame the concert venue when he's the one that incited this conduct? I bet now you're starting to see that there is a pattern here of conduct that's really becoming clear. And unfortunately for Travis Scott, a lot of these things were caught on video and in photographs. So it's not going to be easy for him to deny it, but let's continue. Then, with eerie foreshadowing, in 2019 at Travis Scott's Astroworld concert that year, as people arrived at the venue, a crowd gathered and they were waiting to get in, and they began climbing over the barricades and they rushed to get into the grounds. And again, it's like, this is a pattern. And even though there's no evidence that he directly encouraged them to do this, clearly, if you were a fan of his, you would probably understand that things like this were acceptable to do, that this kind of conduct was acceptable because that's what he had encouraged in the past. Well, 3 people were injured. They had minor leg injuries and were transported to local hospitals. To make things even worse and really cringy, Travis Scott, after this happened and these injuries occurred, gleefully posted video on Instagram, basically endorsing what had happened, and he got a real kick out of it, which is just kind of sick in my opinion. The video shows fans beginning to climb over the metal barriers before the massive crowd knocks the gates down and runs towards the entrance. And again, like I said, although he didn't openly encourage them to jump the barricades, his comments on Instagram show that he apparently approved of the action, and based on his past history, fans may have thought jumping the barricades was okay. Now you can begin to see why a pattern of behavior might be relevant to the 2021 Astroworld incident. So now this brings us to Astroworld 2021 and that terrible night. And in the aftermath of what had happened, as I said before, several lawsuits were filed, the biggest one having like 300 plaintiffs. But what was really gross and what, as a lawyer, made me want to puke was lawyers began salivating at the thought of millions of dollars in fees from these lawsuits. Some of them even posted ads on social media where people could fill out a form to let them know if they were injured. And several lawyers did this. And I'm going to put the examples up here, but it just grosses me out. I'm sort of like ambulance chasing, where it's like right in the aftermath of this, without even time to breathe or people to grieve and people to heal, they put up these ads trying to get clients off of the backs of this tragedy, and I just think it's gross. Ben Crump is the attorney. He's, I guess, a well-known attorney. He's the one who got 300 plaintiffs together and put together this one massive lawsuit that we're going to be talking about. I'm going to show you a little bit of here, and that's like the big one. But you can see there are quite a few defendants in this case, and I'm not going to read them all, but two of the most prominent are Travis Scott and Drake, who was also at the concert and had been up on stage with Travis Scott. There's some allegations I'll get to in a second about conduct on his part and Travis Scott's part, but we'll get to that in a second. So I'm going to put this up. What the plaintiffs are alleging is that the defendants knew or should have known about Travis Scott's past concert problems, and basically they should have been prepared to deal with similar incidents at the 2021 festival, knowing that there had been chaos and injuries and stampedes at previous concerts, and that the fans that attended these concerts seemed to be pretty rowdy. So they should have been prepared for it. And that's what the plaintiffs are saying. They should have been prepared, and they weren't well prepared to handle what happened. They also are saying that Travis Scott was the one person who could have stopped the show and told the crowd to back off, but that he didn't, and instead he kept performing for another hour. The lawsuit also alleges that Travis Scott and Drake both incited the crowd and encouraged them to surge the stage. And so that's definitely going to come into play. The allegation is they encouraged and incited them, and that's what led to this tragedy. And I know for sure they're going to want to bring in evidence of what's happened at these past concerts. And of course, Travis Scott's lawyers are going to fight to not have it. But in a criminal trial, a lot of times you can't introduce past bad acts to try to prove that somebody is a bad person and that therefore they're guilty. But you can introduce, if it shows a pattern of conduct that's relevant to the lawsuit or to the criminal charges, the court most of the time will allow you to present evidence showing what's happened in the past. And in this case, of course, we see there's a pattern, things that have happened that have similarity to the reckless and dangerous conduct that occurred at the 2021 festival has occurred in the past. And so the plaintiffs are going to be arguing that this is relevant to show that all of the defendants should have known that this might happen based on the past. And that's what I was just saying is, so what they're saying is, here's a pattern of conduct. Here's what happened at Astroworld. You can see why Travis Scott is guilty of negligence. And that's basically going to be their case. What will happen in terms of will they win the lawsuit? It's hard to predict. I'm sure there will be some negligence determined in this case in terms of like the security, the people who set up the concert arena. Those people might be found to have been negligent in their conduct. Will Travis Scott be found negligent and Drake found negligent? I don't know. You know, I think there's certainly a good argument based on the past incidents and the conduct of his encouragement of fans to do this kind of stuff in the past. There's a 50-50, obviously, a 50-50 chance that they're going to win against Travis Scott. I think they will win against or get settlements from some of the defendants. And who knows, Travis Scott and Drake may decide to just settle it to make this thing go away, because it's really had a terrible impact on his career, as I'm sure you guys have heard. You know, he's been canceled from a lot of things that he had booked, and sponsorships and things that have been taken away because of what happened. So I'm sure he's really anxious to move on. So he may just end up deciding to settle, but I can't predict, and I'm not going to predict what I think is going to happen. I have no idea what's going to happen, and nobody does. So thank you for joining me, and I want to thank Be the Commentator for doing this collab with me. It's been great. She's a great person, and thanks a lot, you guys.
Pretty please. Subscribe, like, and hit the bell. I get a treat for every new sub. Thank you.